Hello,
Hello!
everybody! Welcome to DnDTime Talks, where we discuss all things Dungeons and also Dragons. I, as always, am Pete.
And I am Jeremy, and we have a very special episode tonight as we are being
Indeed we
joined
do.
by the one and the only. Wrong thing! This is what I meant to do, MattyMorgs!
Hey! Welcome, Matty. It's good to have you on with us tonight.
So, Matty, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to show up with you all again, and hopefully not be on the receiving end of some devilry.
Well, hopefully not. I'm sure it'll be fine.
It'll be
It'll be fine.
not too, like, we promise no more than, like, 2 or 3 acts of devilry at the most.
I mean, I promise no minimum to my acts of devilry. No maximum. Well, Matty, for those who may not be familiar, MattyMorgs is a fellow Twitch streamer here who streams Dungeons and Dragons content. You want to tell them a little bit about what you do? For anyone unfamiliar.
Yeah, well, thank you. I started off in late January of this year as a character creator, as someone who is running a workshop is the best way to describe it, where we would make random characters and we would learn the rules of the game as we're exploring. We're not doing optimal builds. We're not doing best wombo combo. It was leaving ourselves open to different challenges in role playing, where our biases, our favorites, the things that we would usually do and feel comfortable about, well, we leave those comfort zones and make characters that were still living, breathing entities. They had their own motivations and such, and I was hoping that this would inspire people to get out of their comfort zones and either learn D&D if they didn't know it already, or to just try something else, see what's out there. Some people might have a favorite, where they always play dwarves or they always play elves, and that's their comfort zone. And what if you then, instead of an elven cleric, what if you went with a mountain dwarf cleric? I mean, you want to talk about maybe a non-optimal build stat-wise. And yet it's still a viable character, and that character still has a backstory that's not just mechanics, but it's helping define who they are, how they think, in the decisions that they're going to end up making. And, well, that roleplay challenge has grown and grown. We've done different themes. We've done different workshop tasks and challenges. And in fact, I think tonight is a good culmination of just such a workshop and challenge alike with what's going to be happening.
And so, Matty, what are you doing? Oh, I mean, this tonight, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of cool role-playing challenges, we're going to be doing an interesting dungeon mastering challenge.
Indeed, I have here in front of me, as Jeremy does as well, a sealed box of minis. Specifically, this one is Icons of the Forgotten Realms, or the Waterdeep Dragon Heist edition, which was sent to us very kindly by MattyMorgs, who is. Do you want to tell them a little bit about the kind of the fundraiser that you're doing on your channel right now, Matty, with these minis?
Oh, yes. On the channel, I have a stock of boxes of miniatures. Each box has 4 random minis in it. And instead of paying the full MSRP for the box, which is between 15 and 18, depending on where you live, or even the set, for 1,000 bits, or it'd be $10. What I'll do is I will open a box of your choice on stream, and we'll go over the figures one by one. And I'll present them to the camera. Actually, I have one that was popped open in a previous session here. So this is Mert, a character that lives in Waterdeep here of some renown. And so we'll go over the miniatures, and then the person who sponsored the box will get to choose which miniature out of there. And even if it's, well, look, I've popped open 4 Xanathars now in the course of doing this fundraiser. And so for $10, which includes the shipping to you at a U.S. address, you could pop open a Xanathar if you really wanted to. And that's a $40 piece in the open market. And so what it does is it helps me to continue to improve the channel and fund the channel, and it puts miniatures on your own table, and everyone wins. And then what I do when I have the 3 spare figures out of the box, I put that in a miniature market on our Discord. And so what you could do then, if you say, well, I could really use 4 goblins for an encounter coming up, or 3 skeletons and 2 town guards, you could go onto the Discord and look at our market channel, and then you can order the miniatures off to the side, and you could build an encounter based on what you would want to customize. And after doing this for a while, and especially with the nature of the show, again, this is where we are here, where you two guys, there's a vicious rumor going around that says that you're rather creative, and so I wanted to send you each a sealed box and challenge you to make an encounter of some kind with whatever the contents are inside that box.
And that is what we intend to do tonight, everybody. Jeremy and I are going to, I guess it's going to depend on how long it ends up taking our 3 brains crashing together to come up with adventures. But we are going to be cracking open these boxes here, seeing what's inside, and just crafting an adventure from scratch with whatever we get. I'm interested, just because it's going to be fun, because I imagine there's going to be a pretty wide range in CR and types of creature that can come out of it. So I'm excited. I'm also just very excited to open a box. As a longtime Magic the Gathering player, there's nothing like the satisfaction of randomly generated collectibles.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just first, minis are awesome. I never had minis playing D&D when I was younger. This is my first foray into minis, which has become quite a collection on this shelving unit behind me. I'm loving them. It's so much fun. But yeah, no, I'm really excited about this. I think this is a really cool kind of culmination, because we've been doing a series on improvisation here on our channel over the last couple of weeks. Last week we were off of that, but I mean, even then we were sort of.
Actually, we were kind of it was more kind of in practice kind of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a great kind of culmination there too. So I'm pretty excited. If this goes well, we might end up or not improving, but taking these kind of things that we've cracked open today, or we end up cracking open today, to build the Delves adventure for the Sunday, which is a kind of more feature length, and then actually play it through. It will be really interesting. So everyone pray that they get Strahd, so I have to kill them with Strahd. Anyway. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Do we want to kick this off? Now, Pete, I see your video's gotten a little choppy. You all right?
Yeah, I was seeing that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because your audio is totally fine, and actually your video is fine now too. So who knows what the problem was with that? But
hopefully everything gets straightened out by the grace of Discord, Lord of Chaos.
Well, now we're on Skype. Skype the tyrant.
Skype is a whole nother thing. Yeah, Skype sounds more like Skype. I think is part of Mechanus. But is it time? Is it time? Shall we begin?
Yeah, I think Pete we'll start with yours. Let's crack that baby open. See what cool minis we get. And of course, as always, chat, feel free to throw your opinions in. We're getting 4 completely random, or well, they're minis from whatever set Pete's opening, but that otherwise they're randomized minis. So we're gonna be building some weird encounters probably. We'll see how they go.
All right. So our first mini. Once I
crack the bad boy open.
Yes. We have. I will do my best to. I haven't mastered your technique. I'll have to see if I can get it to.
You gotta move them. You gotta move them way up there, Pete.
Yeah.
We have the were-rat.
Oh
the
boy.
Were-rat. Very good. Also, so cool. So cool. All right. Next up, we have. I like this one. This is I'll get it in focus. This is Merchant. This particular mini. That seems a nice, very kind of vague one for building an adventure. That's going to be.
Oh, I like this. This gives this could be as little as our crippled old person in the adventure, or the poor injured old man, or this could be a more interesting nuance.
Man. This is this one, the synergy that's building the adventure for us, as we have here.
Oh shit!
We have our Cranium Rat Swarm. and can't quite get it to focus in.
Yeah, the miniatures play with the camera. There they
we
are.
go. The cranium rat
Oh
swarm.
boy,
Interesting.
Yeah, all those little
it's a very interesting
noggins.
adventure.
And last, and of course, not least,
Farfel, I haven't sentenced him to death yet. We're gonna build the adventure. It hasn't been determined yet. Except the players will kill the merchant. They'll just kill him. Oh shit, Chaotic Blue, I love this already. The rat merchant.
Ooh.
we have, last but not
He's
least,
just a rat king.
Ooh, yeah.
the
Oh
Annis,
no.
the Annis hag.
Oh
man.
my god.
I do love me an Annis hag. That's a great monster. The return of Bitter Betty.
This is actually one hell of a pack to crack open. There's the were-rat, the merchant, the cranium rat swarm, and the Annis hag.
All right.
Jeez. Yeah, I mean, this thing, you can't. This writes itself.
I feel like it does. Who would like to take the first swing? I suppose we need to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there are already some awesome ideas in chat. Chaotic Blue is saying a rat merchant. So maybe the merchant is the cranium rat, or controlled by the cranium rat swarm, or maybe is the swarm an illusion or something.
It
some
feels
Pied
like
Piper thing.
What you may want to do as well, if you're familiar with the monsters, is throw out, what makes a cranium rat instead of a normal one.
That's a great idea.
Or an Annis hag as opposed to a green hag or a night hag.
Well, the Annis hag. Oh, I see another cool idea about the rats. So I'm going to try and separate these into, because Raventel's saying a rat merchant. He just sells rats.
just selling rats. That's just how he makes his living.
So, the Annis hag, for those who may not be familiar with the creature, and I think I'm right. I might be confusing with a different hag, but I think that's the one that eats babies.
Annis hag does in fact eat babies.
Yep,
They're like the big ones. They have that big hug move. They kind of live up
they
in the
eat
mountains.
the babies.
A lot of the times they kind of run hordes of things like orcs and goblins, or perhaps in this case were-rats. But that is the Annis hag. They're the hag that's like really big, and they don't beat you with magic. They just beat you by punching you a lot.
Beat the crap.
Yeah,
out
they just
of you.
beat the hell out of you. Make him an old man in a dungeon trying to collect rats to sell. But of course, there will be an old man one way or another. There would have to be. But yes, and also the cranium rat swarm. For anyone unfamiliar with cranium rats are absolutely terrifying. They look a lot like regular rats, with the one difference in that on their heads, their brains are exposed. You can see their brains kind of sticking out of the top of their skulls. And a singular cranium rat it does not pose too much of a threat. It's pretty easily disposed of like another rat. It has kind of the ability to kind of collect telepathy, but when you put a lot of them together, they become like an hyper-intelligent swarm that can cast like really powerful mental and like psionic magics. And I can't remember all of the abilities off the top of my head, but
I mean, their core one is they can dominate monsters.
Yes, that's the big one.
So they're lab rats that turn you into the lab rat.
Yeah, I mean, that's another way to look at it. Yeah. Exposed brains. You're just asking for brain damage. Yeah, you know what, Raventel? You'd think that, but apparently not. It just makes them smarter. Be forgotten when merchant saying he dropped his wares in the swamp after being attacked by an old ugly woman. He stole her pet rats.
So
were-rat. Oh, the were-rat. Right, we got a were-rat too. We
also have the were-rat, and I think all of y'all can probably guess what a were-rat is if you're weren't already familiar with it. It is very much like a werewolf, but it's more of a rat-based one.
I mean, it's a little different. It's pretty
kind of a human affected with a lycanthropy, or I guess
it is evil, just like werewolves. I guess they're a little more like sneaky though, right? You're getting like
they have more
sly and mischievous
of what the rat is, but with the same kind of full moon. Although I actually don't even think the moon factors in much in 5e. I just always in my brain it does.
So let's think about like what CRs we're looking at for these creatures. Were rats are CR2. Merchant are, I think they're CR0, right? They're just like humans.
I think
merchant
there's
is.
an
I think merchant is.
non-combatant.
Well, I imagine merchant is whatever we need merchant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
And our swarm of cranium rats is going to sit in right at a
5,
CR5.
yeah.
And
then the
think
hag
Menace
is going to
hag
be 6.
is right around there as well, yeah.
So this is actually really cool, right? We have our underlings, right? The were rat.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there'd probably be a couple were rats, maybe. That would make some sense. Is they're kind of like maybe the first thing, whatever the heroes would run into, the first kind of setback.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question, right, is do the were rats work for the cranium rats or the anus hag? I kind of like the idea that like that those two creatures are kind of at odds. That might be it.
I think there's a lot of kind of potential there. I imagine that the Annis hag, in some way, I mean, they're going to be related. So perhaps the Annis hag was the one that made these cranium rats in the first place by just kind of toying around with rats a little bit too much, stumbled on something a bit odd, and now is having a little bit of a hard time controlling the things which she herself made. Perhaps the cranium rats are kind of, fighting back and trying to take control of whatever setup they have going on with this merchant and these were rats. What do we want to do with this merchant? Do we want to make him kind of like a pawn in the scheme that's being, manipulated? Is he like the face of a business, or is he someone that's actively working with the two of them for evil intent?
Okay.
Well,
Matt,
he could
do you have
be.
anything?
He could be a middleman. I mean, oftentimes, especially in older societies, goods had to change hands several times because over distances, you had teamsters driving wagons, and then you had people loading and unloading, and then you had, people bring it to market, and then market to the storefront, and etc. So you could have him as a middle management, or look, he's dressed as a merchant. In fact, he does look kind of dapper, maybe even, dare I say, foppish. This merchant could also be a wizard in disguise, or maybe a wizard who sort of moonlights, no lycanthropy pun intended, who kind of moonlights as a merchant of his own wares. He makes magical concoctions or items, in a storytelling sense. For an adventurer, it's easy to recognize a merchant, and so that's sort of like your level 1 encounter, not a fight, but it's easy to understand. Then you get shipped off to the swamp to talk to the hag, and you're like, oh, well, the hag, the hag's a hag. And then meanwhile, the merchant could be either the BBEG or the one actually scheming the whole time, because, you would go and confront the hag, and she'll say one thing or another. And then you'll end up going back to the merchant, maybe because she brought something to light. And if your party, well, it would be a moral choice or a moral opportunity. But the hag might say, don't kill me. Did you actually look at this merchant's wares, or did you go to the red warehouse on the side of the swamp? And then that could be an adventure to go there. And suddenly the merchant the whole time has been either the BBEG of the adventure, or has been, or it doesn't have to be like an evil, dominant, world shattering, but maybe he's doing experiments and is turning rats into these. I don't know if the cranium rats are technically aberrations, but maybe if you're living on a swamp, it's kind of easy to take care of any mistakes you've made. And he's been dumping creatures out into the swamp. So the hag the whole time has been grumpy, of course, but she's grumpy because this wizard is dumping his alchemical or magical leftovers in the swamp. And there you go.
I imagine the Annis hag also. Hags kind of, when you think of hags, I often think of bubbling things in a potion. Rats sound like potion ingredients, and maybe this guy's been selling her the wrong. Maybe this guy's been selling her the wrong kind of rats.
I loved everything that you just said, and it kind of like it tied back into something someone mentioned earlier, which is a kind of Pied Piper feel.
Oh yeah.
So what if, right? This is the merchant, right? And he's the bad guy all along. And maybe, so the rats can dominate creatures, right? So maybe the rats are controlling the merchants, and we can kind of tie this in with like there are disappearances, like maybe children are disappearing or whatnot, and the adventurers like kind of follow it back to this merchant, but then the merchant just redirects them to this hag, right?
So it's kind of a Ratatouille situation.
Kind of.
Where kids are being made into food by rats.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Yeah, kids are being made into food by rats, and the Annis hag actually is completely unresponsible for the disappearances, or at least those disappearances. But the merchant, or who the cranium rats, are trying to like get the heroes off their trail by pointing them to this other evil. That could be interesting too.
Yeah.
So where do you guys think the were-rat comes
and
into play?
maybe he's turning the children into were-rats.
Oh, wonderful! Child, oh no, it's child were-rats.
That's why they're so small and fast.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, like in oh shoot, what's the island in Pinocchio where the kids turn into donkeys and stuff for their sins?
I have actually never seen Pinocchio, but that sentence...
Pleasure Island, I think it is.
Oh God. There's a lot going on in that sentence.
I see we have a visitor.
Yeah, we have a cat. It happens.
I just want to point out this fantastic pun in chat by Farfel13. Will there be any haggling?
I hope so.
Oh,
we have to include that pun. Now, we have hags, we have merchants we have to have haggling in there somewhere.
Yep, someone has to rat out another person, and...
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
God.
If there's some kind of informant situation, if they are a literal rat in addition to being a rat, like...
Oh, yeah.
So let's start kind of deciding on one kind of core concrete thing. We've been kind of, I think, jostling around back and forth between different kind of creatures to choose as our main threat, who the real kind of villain is. Do we want to go with like the merchant, or do we want to go with the swarm of cranium rats? Because those seem like the two that we're kind of getting tossed back and forth the most, with the Annis hag being kind of unintentionally involved in what's happening.
I like the idea, right, that the merchant isn't like willingly doing anything. The merchant is just completely controlled by the rats all the time.
So it would be the swarm.
That's what I think. I think that's a really cool way of tying them in. And that they're kind of like the mastermind, right? Because they're the mastermind, literally.
I like it.
Some of these rats sound pretty wary. That might have been a pun, but I'm not following.
I mean, we're now programmed to assume that all is a pun.
Yes.
After that first haggling, absolutely crushing it on haggling.
Yeah, the seal's been broken, guys.
Yeah. I'm just wanted to look over right now, looking over the were-rat to see what it kind of is capable of.
Matty, you didn't even realize if the merchant was a were-rat, he'd be moonlighting his own wares. You got two unintentional ones in the same sentence.
Oh wow. All right. So, in that case, what is the context? What is the context in which you think that an adventuring party would stumble into this sort of situation? Is this sort of a children have been disappearing and we'd like you to investigate it kind of thing? Or is this more of just like kind of a random encounter? They just come across this and find that this random kind of merchant that they found in what setting? This Annis hag. When you think hags, you kind of think swamps, although Annis hags are sometimes kind of mountaintop hags. Rats. When I hear rats, I always kind of instantly associate sewer. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of setting do we want to do? Maybe a town?
Yeah, I think a town is going
to come into play one way or another.
Yeah.
What's the geography of the lands of DnDTime? Isn't there like there's a frog swamp, and you do have there's Central City, isn't there?
If we want to kind of fit into the land of DnDTime, then the Baradak Swamp would probably be the number one place in which to put this particular adventure.
The problem is there's not really a good like town there.
Yes.
You know, there's not like a place to where else could we put a hag? I think actually this kind of like reverse double intrigue we could actually fit in super well in Old Town.
Oh, I was
Pete,
going
you
to say.
remember Old Town?
Of course, I remember Old Town. I was also going to say South Town, but I guess
That
that's
would
more of
work
an
too.
undead, more of an undead
That would
focus
work
there.
pretty well too, though.
The tone is right, although
Yeah.
usually South Town is undead. But
hags are fey, if I'm not mistaken, by origin, aren't they?
yes, hags are
Yes.
fey.
Okay.
And I think that the cranium rats, I think they're
They might.
actually considered beasts, even though they definitely feel kind of like aberrations.
Mhm.
So, well, let's I mean, we can always create a new region within the Baradak Swamp if we want to do that kind of thing. If we want a swampy sort of town, we could just establish just a small kind of town.
Yeah, sure. Town should be named Hamelin. I feel like that's something that I should get, but I'm just still not.
Well, the
Not a
Hamlet
pun,
from
just
the
go
Pied
to-
Piper.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. All right, I dig it. Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll call it Hamelin, and this will be a town, in, or maybe not in, but right. It's like on the outskirts of the Baradak.
Indeed, the land is a little bit kind of damp here. When you walk around, your feet sink in a little bit, but it's not, it's not entirely full, dead-on crocodiles and bullywugs and growing everywhere.
Let's think of what's their commerce there. I mean, they're by a bog, right? So like the main commerce I can think of is like maybe harvesting rare flowers or something. Could be animals. It could be.
I was imagining some hunting.
It could be peat.
Yeah. We could be harvesting peat.
Yeah, we're gonna harvest some peat.
Nice.
Well, rice grows in swampy areas. I look at Louisiana. What comes out of there? You have a lot of seafood. You have a lot of okra. You have a lot of rice. There could be different flowers. Rare herbs and spices. You're talking about peat moss. There could be something that is in the bayou. Or don't forget this too, because of all the decomposition. Maybe they harvest. This is something I've done in my own in my home campaign. They have different sort of like balloons or a way to catch swamp gas that then they sell to people to use to make fires. It's like a natural gas source. Or you could always have something like an oil or a tar from the decomposition. So you can have that too.
So one of the things I really like about what you just said, right, with the swamp gas, because the question, right? So we have these kids that are going missing, and presumably they're going missing like out in the swamp. So maybe there's a reason that the kids have to go out in the swamp. Maybe it's somewhere small that only they can like fit into. They need to go in to get whatever these resources are, or maybe they just have to be light enough to not like pop the swamp gas, kind of like things that inflate. Right.
Oh,
so
okay.
You're thinking the merchant, so you're thinking the merchant kind of hires them under the guise
and they keep going missing, right? And then the townspeople are like, "All right, merchant," and the merchant's like, "No, because I imagine kids go missing sometimes.
Perhaps this is a question of kind of a transition of blame. The merchant is placing it on the Annis hag, which everyone knows is a threat and lives nearby. And so,
but in reality,
he's being manipulated by rats. I guess we also need a kind of a way to. Oh, so he's turning them into the were-rats. And what is the purpose of turning them into the were-rats? Just to be more kind of pawns for the, the swarm of cranium rats. Large-term schemes. What's the end game for these kind of cranium rats in making these minions?
What do rats want?
Well, if they're sentient and they're self-aware, they would want to be accepted by people and not just be considered pests, or things, play toys of cats. You had a cat on yours, I had a cat on mine. They're ubiquitous. And so these self-aware rats might actually just be trying to live a normal life. And so if they make these were-rat kids, people love kids, but the rats are going to love the other rats. And so as they can lift, they can move, they'll grow up and infiltrate the town's hierarchy and become other merchants or the mayor or whatever. And so it's a long-term scheme to infiltrate society and make them into rats, at the behest of the cranium rats, who otherwise physically are constrained to, well, be a rat.
I really like that.
I
think
do
it's
as
a great
well. I
idea.
like that almost redemptive nature to it. We have a lot of ideas for names for the merchant coming out in chat. Rattenfanger, Fanger von Ratten.
Fanger
all
von
right.
Ratten.
I
I like Fanger because Fanger sounds to me it's not like completely on the nose, and if he introduces himself as Mr. Fanger, and you don't ask his full name, which is Fanger von Ratten, I can imagine them just being like, oh, that's just kind of a cool fantasy merchant name. They wouldn't instantly go, well, this is the person that's the culprit because the name. I like it, is I guess what I'm getting.
It does have kind of a sound like Fagin from Oliver Twist, the guy who would take the orphans and train them to be urchins and thieves and such.
Indeed, yes.
I super dig the idea. So
I also am liking this kind of children idea because I feel like it will allow us to introduce as an NPC, and I think if we're going to have these were-rats, I can imagine having one of these guys, one of these children, play kind of a significant role in sort of revealing the plot, because if they're planning on reintroducing these kids into society, I'm sure there are some kids that are just in the town that are living with rat lycanthropy, and are trying to keep it under wraps because they don't want their parent to find out that they're now rats, because they're probably told not to let people know that they're rats yet.
Or I guess the question, right? Because were-rats tend to be like lawful evil. That tends to be one of those lycanthropies that corrupt. So I guess the question, right, are those kids really kind of free-willed at this point anymore? Or are they... Sorry, go ahead.
Thrall.
Well, how about this? I kind of brought up in passing, we had well, I think it was Paradise Island or whatnot, for the kids in Pinocchio. And we're talking about swamps, we're talking about bayous. And that was making me think about the Mississippi River, and therefore Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And if you are familiar, the group of friends all went out to what they called Pirate Island in the middle of the Mississippi River. And that's where they were living and camping to get away from the adults, because they had this life of freedom. They had this life of, we're going to run away and we're going to be pirates and we're going to be our own people. And so what the rats are doing is, we want to talk about the Pied Piper. The rats are converting kids into were-rats and have given them their own little, their playground in the swamp or in a river or something elsewhere. And so what the adventurers can do is end up catching one of the kids who come back to town in order to steal supplies or something for the rest of the kids. And then they find out, kind of like Tom Sawyer, who wasn't dead. He showed up at his own funeral. Something along those lines can happen as well, where they catch a kid who was supposed to have been dead, and then they turn into a were-rat, well, I'll never talk or something, or maybe it just escapes, and then they can track down the rats there and find this whole island. And all of this is offering, and as a DM, my senses are tingling. Adventurers would want to fight were-rats. Adventurers would want to crush cranium rats. Adventurers would want to nuke this hag. But the hag is innocent. The kids are kids, even though they're were-rats. And another moral crux is these cranium rats never asked to become sentient and burdened with all of society's woes, even though they're incapable of handling it. And they're trying as best as they can to actually normalize themselves into society, albeit through this kind of backwards fashion. And this entire campaign sounds like it's a series of moral choices. Or, I've been playing Undertale lately as a side stream. You could go on a genocide run, or you could go on a peace run. And so what would you want to do as a party?
I think the answer is kill everything most of the time. And I'm thinking now that we kind of established this merchant, maybe the merchant's not being necessarily dominated by the cranium rats. Maybe he's just another were-rat that's grown up.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right?
That's in human form, and is just kind of part of this new sort of little home they're trying to carve out for themselves on one of their first sort of experiments with it.
Yeah, maybe he is like the OG were-rat. Maybe the cranium rats can't, but the cranium rats are the ones that are behind the whole scheme, I think, because I think they're the brains of the operation.
So I imagine they
like
go to this island, and I think we're really starting to kind of hone into what this adventure would be like now.
I also really love, right, how this adventure already has branching paths, right?
Indeed.
If the party, if the party ends up, like catching one of these children trying to steal from the town and like interrogates them and find out they're were rats and everything, and goes down that path, uh, there's this cool thing where like they might just completely avoid the hag.
Yeah.
Or they could be completely duped by the merchant and, you know, end up going and fighting the hag. And maybe the merchant needs to remove the hag, right? Maybe the hag is a threat to their kind of were-rat
siphoning off some of the
thing.
were-rat children in the swamp. Like,
yeah, I mean that would be a perfectly reasonable kind of deal.
And I also
Let's just let them
imagine
have the swamp. I'm with you, Chaotic Blue. I'm with you.
I imagine that there's definitely an outcome in this adventure where the players go, they speak to the were-rat merchant, they go, they kill the Annis hag, they come back, the people of the village hail them as heroes, and they didn't actually solve the problem in any way, and they just leave thinking that they did. I think that's like a very likely outcome of this.
Well, and I also like this other idea in there from The Forgotten One in the chat saying the Annis hag could be the mother or the mother of the eldest child who leads the were-rat children. Almost like a matronly kind of role in the kind of were-rat thing. So maybe she doesn't have to be a villain, or maybe there's some flexibility in, depending on kind of how the adventure is panning. But anyway, I dig this a lot.
So yeah, I don't know. I think this is starting to get to a very kind of cool place. I like what we've been getting up with here. Do we want to? I guess now is the crux point where we could open a second box, Jeremy, and start something new. Now that we have a good idea here, or we could just really flesh out this for the kind of the rest of this particular stream and work on that. What are you feeling, Matty and Jeremy?
I have as much time as you all want tonight. I have no time restrictions, so. You know, you have a very active chat going right now. I think people's brains are spinning. And to step back for one moment, all of this discussion, all of this plotting and morals, moral challenges and concepts, we've invoked books and literature. We've invoked, you know, folk tales and all that. This all happened because you opened a piece of cardboard that had 4 pieces of colored plastic in it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
This is why I love this hobby.
It's pretty awesome. Pretty incredible.
But I think you have a pretty strong base. I'm good if you wanted to crack open the second box.
Yeah.
And then take whatever time that you all want. I'm on your time. I'm super flexible.
Well, before we crack that open, let's just one last time. Let's try and run through really what we've come together for this first adventure. So to summarize, Pete, you want to hold up the minis as we mention our 4 minis. Our 4 minis that we cracked open.
Our merchant. Oh, let me get on Skype so I can just see exactly if I'm getting him into focus.
Yes, our first mini that we cracked open was a merchant, a very simple, humble character. The next mini that cracked open was a were-rat.
Both wearing red.
Both wearing red, yeah. Maybe red is like
synergy.
Yeah, right. The next mini cracked open was the Cranium Rat Swarm.
The Cranium Rat Swarm, I absolutely adore.
They're cute. And last but not least, the Annis hag.
Indeed.
Kind of the big piece of the set. And
the Annis.
She has those skulls and whatnot on her back too. There's a lot of detail to that miniature.
Yeah, this is an awesome mini. Annis hag is. I mean, I always have been kind of a sucker for hags, but the Annis hag might be my favorite hag.
Pete's got a weakness for hags.
I like hags. What can I say?
The adventure we came up with was a merchant by the name of Mr. Fanger, who is controlled by or working with an intelligent mastermind cranium rat swarm, has been over time getting the children from the town of Hamlin to go out and collect swamp gas, because only they, with their light bodies, can go over and attach the sacks to collect the escaping gas without popping it. They have been corrupted and transformed into were-rats, and Mr. Fanger has been building a society of these kind of rat folk, these were-rats, out in the swamp, so that the cranium rats and himself, being a were-rat, can finally feel kind of accepted and not just hated by societal bounds. When the party arrives in the town, some kind of plot hook gets them interested in investigating disappearing children. Maybe it's nobles, maybe it's any number of things. And they end up finding either running into one of the were-rats stealing from the town, or get sent on a side quest by Mr. Fanger himself, who claims an Annis hag has been stealing.
Mhm.
And from there, it all just unfolds. They either go defeat the Annis hag, think they've done a job well done, and leave none the wiser, or they find out more information and end up confronting Mr. Fanger and have a difficult moral choice to make. I really like this adventure. I think it's a pretty
do too.
cool. I like it. I dig it. I mean, it'd be great if like everyone on the stream didn't know it. So like, if I ran it from them, it'd be okay. But
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking the exact same thing.
I
was like,
can't
man,
run. I can't run this adventure this Sunday. Like I was, but that's okay.
Well, you do. You just change it, and suddenly it's a Hannis ag. That's
Oh,
wait,
the weremice.
the haggis Ann.
Terrible.
A herewat instead of a were-rat.
I was
Right,
thinking,
this makes
like,
swap that?
They'll never
I was
get it.
thinking just brain mice, a swarm of brain mice.
Yes. None will be the wiser.
Exactly. We'll make the merchant. We'll make the merchant a female, despite the fact that it's a male figurine, and that'll throw him off completely.
Yep,
No one ever
yep.
suspects the woman NPC as being bad. Which I honest as God, if you ever want to trick your player characters, men can be very dumb. They don't even think of like, oh, the female NPC, she must not be evil. If you ever want to surprise an evil NPC, that's how you do it.
That's very true.
It's sexist, but it's true. Anywho, we're gonna crack open Sex Box so we can
I
start
wish it wasn't, but
getting the next adventure. And this box is also from Icons of the Realms. It's a set by WizKids, who I think make the official minis for 5th edition D&D. This is specifically, the expansion is the Monster Menagerie 1. It has some of the most iconic. That's actually a great point, Raven. I shouldn't assume the mini's gender. The mini appears masculine in its form. That's all I can say.
this is true.
But yeah, Monster Menagerie 1 has some of the coolest monsters and classic monsters in D&D. So we're going to crack this boy open and see what we get. Got my little X-Acto knife to cut the side. Really, I should have like a box cutter cut the side.
I mean,
so I
that's
don't
better than
slice
me.
my
I
hand.
used these dumb, unwieldy scissors.
I mean, all right.
I get to watch. I get to watch other people open packs. My second favorite thing after opening packs myself.
Max Mikester asked, "Where do you get these minis? I might want one." Max, if you have a friendly local game store that runs D&D content or sells it, you might be able to find them there. Otherwise, you could look online if you don't have a local store to support. Or, I mean, if I don't do a hashtag humble brag, I might be able to help you out as well.
Yes, some might say that Matty is selling these minis on his stream as a fundraiser for his show. So if you love Dungeons and
Lies and
Dragons,
slander. Who dares?
I'm one of the ones who will say that. I'm going to commit right now.
oh my goodness, holy
doing that.
shit! This is quite an amalgamation here. Where do I start?
All right, well, everyone, put on your cerebral rat caps.
Hey, everyone, put on your aluminum foil hats. Ingram9 subscribing yet
I might
again.
need 2 bow ties for this.
5 months in a row. Thank you for your support, bud. That is Ingram just gave us another.
Thank you
so
silver
much.
thing. Thank you, friend.
Thank you for supporting the boys, Ian.
So, all right. This is a kind of throw over to MattyMorgs' channel, but if we can get a woo in chat, where our first mini is a wolf.
Hey.
Oh.
He's not showing up very well. I'm bad with my hand. Wolf, come on. Come, please. All right, it's not zooming in. Let me see.
Yeah,
maybe
the light and autofocus and stuff. It can be, they could be tricksy.
It's because autofocus was not on my camera. Ooh. All right, let's see.
Hey,
he is a wolf.
Oh, look at that little guy.
Oh no, it's too far.
I like the yellow eyes.
Let me hold him with my.
Is that a regular wolf or a dire wolf?
This is a regular old wolf. He's too small to be a dire wolf. He's pretty sweet.
Actually, Pete, you would have had a chance to open a dire wolf in your set.
Yeah.
It would have been a large
Cool.
figurine out of that set.
I think I often underestimate how big dire wolves are supposed to be. Dire wolves are huge.
Just from the response in chat, I can tell the wolf is the good guy in this adventure. Our next adventure is very, very bizarre. Yep, it is what I thought it was. This next creature is a giant fire beetle.
That's a good bread and butter monster in D&D.
Nice and all-purpose.
Yeah, very interesting little boy.
Yeah.
Our next one, people are going to really love. They love these guys. The Mimic.
Oh,
hey, dude, nice.
The Mimic.
Come on.
Everyone loves the Mimic.
Come on. Webcam, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, it was working a second ago. Oh, I lost.
Yeah, it's like, what's foreground? I want to focus on a background I can't actually focus on or see.
Mimics are a complicated adventure just by themselves.
Yeah.
I think.
All right. Well, it's not really zooming in well, but he looks really cool. Has lots of really great teeth.
You can see that. You can see that tongue. That's coming out clear.
And eyes and stuff. Oh, there it's zoomed in.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, he's pretty radical.
Yep, there he is.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. Ravendale, that's a nice treasure chest. Let's crack that bad boy open. And of course, I love this mini. I'm really glad that this is going to be one for our adventure. The unicorn.
Hey!
Ooh. That is
Always I want to be with you.
Nice.
Live with you. Anyway.
So that's our big bad, right?
Yeah, the unicorn's the big bad, and we're gonna help the wolf kill the unicorn. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just amazing. This is awesome. This is a really baller box. What the hell? Matty, you sure that these were sealed?
I did not handpick those boxes. I treated you all in first come first serve fashion like I would anyone else. I pulled the top two boxes and y'all got what you got.
Max Meister saying
very tailor-made to me.
Max Meister saying, "Oh, I want the unicorn as my mount now." Max, you're gonna have to talk with Farku about that. He now, I believe, has a retired unicorn mount. He could probably, but you're gonna need to talk to him about it. Poor Windstar. Anyway, that's DnDTime Talk. Let's talk about this. Holy moly, what an amalgamation of beasties here. Where do we begin?
Well,
let's start with what we got, right?
This sounds very woodland to me. This sounds outdoorsy. What with all of these all of these sort of animals. Although there's definitely a big contrast in the type of outdoorsy, as I guess I picture beetles, the fire beetles, more in kind of a cavey setting, and unicorn where but a sacred grove of ancient and good magics.
So how does the mimic tie into this?
It's the unicorn saddle. There's mimic friend. This seems like just a no conflict, just meet all these interesting things adventure. Look at this cute dog.
Have either of you guys ever run a monster party before where the PCs are actually monsters out of the book?
I have not done that myself.
No, I've not.
Oh.
It's an interesting one to run though.
So I don't know if this is the party that would go through the swamp and rescue the kids, but you may have actually cracked open an interesting adventuring party where what you do is you normalize the CRs of the monsters, and instead of a full player book or a player sheet, you give a monster handout to your players, and they have to engage in the world from the perspective of what they are.
That sounds very fun.
That actually sounds amazing.
Yeah, I would love to play a mimic. That would be absolutely ridiculous.
So I've been thinking, right? Yeah. My first immediate thought was, right, so we were talking about if we were going to run. So I don't think this is quite the monster party, just because we have some very, very strange different things. Why the hell is a unicorn partying with a mimic? Right? I mean, we could come up with it.
It could be something mutually beneficial, or what if instead of a unicorn, as in I'm a magical beast, it is actually just a horse that has a horn, and so and so people, it's kind of a mutant. People want to chase it down, it doesn't have any healing powers. It can't
I'm
grant
just
wishes.
a horse, a horn.
It can't teleport.
Yeah, it's just a horse that had the circumstances to grow a horn out of it. That's non-magical, and so the mimic, meanwhile, mimics probably aren't too mobile, and so the two formed a partnership where the mimic can help the horse, and the horse helps the mimic.
Ooh.
I like Bionic Shiva's comment. The horn is a mimic.
Oh yeah, or the horn is a mimic too. Yeah. Wouldn't that be something?
It's part of their snake oil salesman routine, where the horse rolls into town with a fake mimic horn.
Guys, it looks like
a mimic horn. Oh, I love that. A mimic horn. How about that?
A mimic horn. All right, I think
that's a lot of fun.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, they should be back in like 2 seconds. The video was just cut out on them, but I think we're back.
Also, Jeremy, don't forget to mute Skype.
Oh yeah, let me just kill you all by double talking all the time. Drive you guys insane.
Very good.
Let's think. Okay. So we could do that. I'm not totally feeling the unicorn, the mimicorn.
Well, I feel
maybe.
I feel like we're there now. We already have the mimicorn in our back pocket. God, we can also do another thing.
So I had an idea, right? Because we have this beautiful nature scene with like the wolf and the fire beetle and the unicorn, but then there's this weird aberrant mimic monster, right? I love, maybe there's an idea, right, where there's like a crashed alien. Holy shit, there's like so much texture on this mimic's tongue. I'm sorry, I got distracted looking at the mimic.
by the glory of the
what if there's a crashed Mind Flayer spaceship in the middle of this grove that has the unicorn, and the unicorn is kind of like corrupted now, and so that the mimic was from the ship, and that could be really cool.
So you're thinking sort of a Invasion of the Body Snatchers situation, where the mimic's coming down and kind of imitating and infecting the unicorn to a degree?
Oh, I wasn't even thinking necessarily that. It could just be the ambient psionic magic which powers their Spelljammer ship. I'm thinking like a cool, like, this is something that the party stumbles upon while traveling in the forest, right? They're going from point A to point B, but something pulls them slightly off the trail and they come across this little side adventure. I don't know.
When you say that, especially off the heels of you saying the mimic's tongue and all that, you know what I'm thinking of is the Venom symbiote.
The Venom.
And,
man.
So the mimic is like a symbiote of some kind that it can detach and be its own thing, but the mimic is this other kind of entity that so you can have a mimic horn, or you can have a
mimic wolf,
a mimiwolf or something like that, and the beetle. I don't know. What if for some reason the beetle can't be affected, and then you're like, oh, there's a weakness, because Venom has a weakness of sonic, noise or whatever. I don't know. I'm throwing everything at the wall.
No, I'm liking this. I like the idea that like maybe what gets the party kind of off the trail is people really were liking ooh when we got to the wolf. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what just kind of happens, right? You're wandering in the woods. It's a rainy night. And up ahead of you, you see the silhouette of like a lone wolf. Its eyes kind of glowing a deep like purple or something. Something just strange and off key. It doesn't appear threatening, and then like it goes to just trail off into the forest, but not far enough. Like it just kind of stops and almost waits for the party to follow. Right? Gives them the idea that like, oh, it wants us to follow it. That's really weird, right? It's kind of the tie into the adventure. Could be neat. I don't know.
I imagine if we're doing this kind of, sort of symbiote corruption vibe, I imagine most of the forest has started to kind of, in that region, become a little bit stranger. I imagine that the trees are kind of getting these kind of purple tinges about the leaves, just from like the radiant energy. And I can see even like, small birds and stuff in the trees and the leaves around, just kind of making odd noises, behaving weird, not startling when you move near them.
Okay, so Farfel pointed out Mind Flayers weren't part of this prompt. That's a fair point. I guess it's going to have to be a giant fire beetle spaceship. They're just trying to go home, guys. No, I don't know. I think that's neat. I like both of the ideas that I've kind of shot up so far. What else do we have though? Because I'm not totally sold on either one yet, even the one I suggested. Pete, what are you got?
And I was gonna say, in that case, I will take a stab now. I guess I'm imagining sort of perhaps kind of we could do a more traditional sort of dungeony vibe where there's an abandoned kind of location, kind of old, kind of snarled, underfed wolves kind of guarding the front of this place, unicorn in mimic cage perhaps, or just unicorn that's kind of like chained up down in this underground kind of abandoned lab kind of vibe. Mimic seems like a great guardian for an abandoned lab. Fire beetles, I picture also in kind of like small cages along the walls, acting almost like lanterns in the space.
Yeah.
Kind of in place of torches.
Fire beetles are often kept for illumination. In fact, they continue to glow even after they die for a while.
I love that idea. It's just an abandoned alchemy lab. That's super cool.
So we could do something
super
kind of
cool.
We could do something along those lines if you're interested in that.
I like that a lot.
There's also a very clear tie-in to that adventure where I imagine you could take a few liberties with unicorn telepathy, which I think is about 60 feet, and just extend it beyond, and you just hear the voice of a unicorn just as you're walking through the woods, just save me, and that would be my best unicorn. But I believe you've done a pretty good unicorn in the past, Jeremy.
No, I have not.
Also,
I love
Farfel
this
saying,
idea, though.
Farfel saying, I definitely think the unicorn should be evil. Well, maybe it's the unicorn's lab, and it's all a trap.
Oh, I don't know if it's necessarily the unicorn's lab. I mean, you could run it that way, but you could also just have it as like the unicorn was brought into this lab sometime, at some point in the past to be experimented on.
The unicorn isn't exactly evil. Okay. Well, I was even thinking like the unicorn wasn't being captured; it was being contained.
Oh fuck! Oh, that's even better. Unicorn being contained. That's always the great twist, right? You have your crazy lab, and people assume, oh, it's an evil mad wizard, like I just did. I love the idea of like, no, it's a good wizard. Just because he made mimics, or she, or whomever they were, made mimics, doesn't mean that they were necessarily bad.
The reverse, says Raventil. That unicorn is secretly evil, but actually secretly good. I love it.
So
unicorns in this edition do get lair actions, and so they are. I mean, they're a CR5. You think, oh, lair action. It's got to be a powerful mummy or a lich or a dragon. No, it doesn't have to be. But they affect the lands around them. Something could happen so that this unicorn could be evil and it could be contained actually for people's safety. And something happened to the research team that was containing this, if not aberrant mechanically, just this odd or a unicorn which is sentient, right? They have let's see, an intelligence 11, and they can understand what's happening. Something has caused it to go evil. It's made the decision to be, more selfish or to pursue a goal at the cost of other people. And, they didn't want to necessarily kill this creature, but they wanted to contain it, maybe understand what's driving it mad. And,
No, I think this is an awesome idea. I'm super into it.
I imagine, just as a fun way to include the mimic, if this is also a place where they're containing things, I imagine the mimic could also just be something that's being contained. But I imagine they go up to the cage, and it's just a really shiny and attractive-looking piece of armor, like a really beautiful breastplate, just sitting in a cage.
Just a classic mimic,
which I feel like would work really well on new players. They'd be like. And they would have that moment, even if they don't know what a mimic is, where they'd be like, well, why is this breastplate in a cage? They'll be like, I don't know. He's probably evil or something, but it's a nice breastplate and I want it. I guarantee you, even when they see through it, the new player would probably just be like, well, I'm still gonna take it.
Yeah, no one's in this lab. It's clearly abandoned, and so I'm gonna get the gimme fingers.
I'm super into this now. So the adventure kind of begins with the telepathic voice of the unicorn kind of calling out for help for the players as they're traveling through the forest or wherever. And maybe like we spice it up a little bit more. Maybe it's not just a voice. Maybe it's also like visceral images of the unicorn being like captured and taken and like injured, which of course is all fabricated by the unicorn. It's all fake because the unicorn's evil. But the unicorn puts these images of like, no, I'm just an innocent unicorn and I've been captured, rescue me. And that's what kind of draws them in, right? They get to, what are we saying, like an old mine? It's in the bottom of like a mine, or what kind of dungeon do you have in mind? A tower, or
I imagined kind of a cave that was meant to look like a cave, and once you got deep enough into it, there was maybe kind of like a secret panel in the wall or something that led to a more constructed space that was being used to contain. That's a first idea.
I like it. Made to look like a
but
cave.
behind a waterfall or in the crook of an old tree is a good entrance to that sort of stuff too.
Ooh, I like behind a waterfall a lot.
I liked in the crook of an old tree.
But
we'll go behind the waterfall.
Maddie, you choose. You choose between the two.
Well, if we have it in the description for fire beetles, it does talk about them living in forests, and wolves are foresty. I mean, they can live in caves as well. Not that waterfalls can't exist in a forest, but I'm getting more of a foresty vibe. So I think you find this big tree. It has like a bunch of gnarls and stuff, and it has and it just has a crook of a tree, or I mean, we can snicker and laugh because we're in elementary school. It's a crotch of the tree, and they go inside, and because it's an out of the way entrance, and in this and then it could turn into a cave system. There's roots and other things, maybe even some hazards, or the roots the roots are grasping. Because look, if a wizard or something set this up to contain this unicorn from it being unleashed on the world. Odd to say that, right? We got to prevent a unicorn from being unleashed on the world. I'm digging a dungeon crawl for this. There's traps that even in the absence, is like a dead man switch, or by a default, if the research team were to die or to be killed off or something, that this place could hold on until either like an extraction, or like the colonists and aliens sent out the call to the colonial marines to come in. And I don't know if we're necessarily, we were talking about aliens before, so I kind of had that in the brain. The mimic is a symbiote. It's kind of like a face hugger or something. I don't know. But this place has its own auto defenses and its own dungeon crawl going through, and I think you could very easily do that. It shows that they're using nature, right? They have fire beetles that are lining the halls, so that there's no fire or other things for whatever reason. The wolves can be patrolling around. The wolves might even be able to feel with an animal sense that yes, there is a great evil contained in here.
That's what I was actually thinking along those lines. I was imagining a wolf. If we want to make the wolf a little bit more important, because I imagine if they're going to battle a unicorn, wolves aren't going to be a big challenge unless we buff them up a lot. But I do like the idea of the wolf maybe being some kind of leftover thing from this containment center. Maybe has a little bit more intelligence than the average creature, and is as they're moving through, trying to like warn the players that it's unsafe in the area that they're moving into, and trying to like herald that this is not what they think it is.
Yeah, and you know what? Who takes the handle animal skill? Not a lot of people. And here it could actually be quite useful. Or those other like ranger or druid spells, like talk with animals. Who takes that? This module, this dungeon will require animal handling and talk or speak with animals, or even speak with plants. It'll hit those long forgotten, often miss or underused spells and skills.
And I love the idea of like, I love the fire beetle lanterns kind of vibe. maybe it's like glass orbs built into the wall, where it's just that's where the fire beetle like burrows are.
And if this place
Maybe
is good, because I imagine if it was an evil kind of location. I'm sorry, I cut you off,
no,
Jeremy?
go ahead, please. It's all
Um,
good.
if it was an evil location, I could picture the beetles in the lanterns just kind of left to die. But I imagine if this is a good place, they are probably set up in such a way that it's a little bit sustainable. Like they are able to kind of move
Yeah.
around
It's
freely
an ant
between
colony.
locations, like an ant colony, exactly.
And I think their encounter with the fire beetle, right? Because I think they're gonna fight the fire beetle. Maybe
Oh
one of
yeah.
those colonies breaks. Right? Maybe the wolf knocks the glass orb down, and that releases the fire beetle.
Or think,
That
if
could
you guys
be.
have played Metroid, right? There's a bunch of little glowing, a little bunch of glowing gribblers that escape. They're not really a big threat, but they can swarm over, or they can, do this or that.
Mm.
And you got to get the morph ball, so you enter the fire beetle colony, and you can go through the tubes in the wall that were providing illumination to then get the high
Oh
jump
yeah,
boots.
yeah, of course, absolutely. And that's where you find the boots of flying, and there you go.
Jeremy,
But
you were running a
that's a mimic.
Metroidvania dungeon in D&D.
I'm super into this right now. I really like this. Both these adventures we kind of put together. So then our kind of our finale, right? So where does it we want the mimics to show up? Does the mimic show up before they reach the unicorn, or is the unicorn kind of the big bad at the
I feel like the unicorn is kind of the climax. I feel like we want
Mhm.
to connect the reveal that the unicorn was being contained and not imprisoned.
Until the very last second? Yeah.
Yeah, so if that's kind of our big story climax, I feel like we also want our big bad to be the unicorn. So then those two
Oh
climaxes
yeah.
kind of mesh.
Oh, I'm with
So
you. I'm thinking like, when do we incorporate the mimic as a challenge? Is it like one of the things they run into along the way to the unicorn, or does that all happen at the same time, where they fight the unicorn and the mimic shows up?
well,
Mimic
Fun
is the
was saying
door
that
that leads.
the mimic is the door that leads to the unicorn, which is funny. Um, yeah, I guess right now the mimic is a little bit, because I was making
Hmm.
that joke before about it also being contained, which is just kind of
Yeah.
it's just there's also a mimic. Think about how to kind of incorporate it in a way that feels like it's part
Well,
of the story.
What if
I
it was a
think
recurring kind of a villain or a monster? If you're
yeah.
familiar in the Final Fantasy series, there's such a creature called Ultros, which is an octopus, which by the way is purple and has, kind of, purpley tendrils like the mimic has. And it comes by and it tries to stop them multiple times. Maybe it can't communicate vocally like stop, don't do this, but it's acting almost like it gets them thinking, oh, there's a poltergeist or something, because things are shifting and moving. And so the mimic will show up
Ooh.
several times before it has an escape to, all right, well, they breach the perimeter. I'm going to move ahead into the access chamber, and then I'm going to try and stop them there. And so the mimic will come alive. Think, oh, here we go. We talk about alien isolation, right? The alien pops out every once in a while, scares you, and then retreats back and will try and cut you off at the next pass. And so the whole time, the mimic has been seemingly an antagonist when really it can't convey to stop. Adventurers, stop going into this lab. You're going to unleash this
Hmm.
ultimate evil unicorn on the world.
The mimic's
And
actually
then,
one of the good guys.
The mimics.
yeah,
I like the idea that the mimic and the dog are working kind of to similar ends in
Yeah.
different ways. The dog probably even is comfortable with the mimic. Like I imagine there's a situation as part of this kind of foreshadowing where they're kind of adjacent, and I would imagine the party would kind of panic if this mimic was like in front of the dog,
Oh shit.
and it just doesn't. Also, uh, just macabre Derek in chat. Oh, mimics, they make the best tables. Uh, agreed.
I
Um,
really, mimics are always used as like the ha gotcha. That rug was actually a mimic. Lol. I kind of like the idea of like the little pretending to be like a specter thing that you'd mentioned, and then like maybe at toward the end, right before they're kind of going to actually enter into the final like isolation chamber where the unicorn is, maybe the mimic like just shows itself, right? Maybe it doesn't try and sneak. Maybe it and the wolf just are there standing to stop you.
Or
Like, as a
what if that's where they
last stand.
combine, like some alchemical, or they go into a
fuck.
chamber or a
Oh,
magic
no.
circle where the mimic and the wolf then turn into this, like, it can now actually communicate, right? It has
A
kind of the
displacer piece.
sentience
It
and the
turns into
empathy
displacer
of the
piece.
wolf with the big old mouth and the teeth and the tongue of a mimic,
Oh god,
and
that
it can
sounds
actually
terrifying.
communicate. And finally, here at the cusp, tell them, as this weird looking venom looking thing, don't let the unicorn out. It might not be intelligent. And so that could be, oh, here's the final boss, guys, as the adventurers. Meanwhile, this is the last guardian trying to keep this evil unicorn from being unleashed into the world.
I really like that. I like that a lot.
And
I
if
almost
you want to
think,
do a
like-
dungeon crawl, I was joking about Metroidvania. Unicorns do have telepathy and other things. You might have to go through the lab and collect certain, like a Magneto anti-telepathy helmet to keep this thing from messing with your mind. Or you have to assemble a couple pieces of like a suit, or you have to get some charms or whatnot to help interact with these species. Because if we're talking about people lived here and worked here, they had to have knowledge and ways to contain or prevent the powers of the unicorn from manifesting.
Yeah, I imagine that the cage it's in is preventing the unicorn from using its teleport ability. I think two possible outcomes are they open the cage after like defeating that awful wolf mimic amalgamation, not quite getting it, and then they open the cage and the unicorn just teleports away. It doesn't care. It doesn't kill them. It just leaves to do whatever it is that it's going to do, and then it's a villain down the road.
Yeah, it sets up for the next adventure.
Well, that's the best scenario when you're playing the game, right, as a DM, and you're planning for them to fight the unicorn at the end for it to be the final battle, but then they fight the wolf and mimic hybrid and get like wrecked, and you're like, oh geez. Oh, they're on like no hit points and they're about to free this unicorn. The unicorn's just gonna be a dick and then leave. All right, and then they'll show up later as a villain.
Or likewise, if we're going to do that kind of Metroid route where you have to kind of collect things, I imagine there would be some kind of setup in the lab to set up what is going on in that cage and spread it out throughout the lab, so they're able to contain it and deal with it if they kind of recognize that, oh well, this thing's here, we want to actually deal with this threat and not just kind of leave it for somebody else or to fall into this trap.
I love the idea where the unicorn has like it has one-way telepathy, so you can't ask the unicorn questions, but it can tell you things. I love the idea of the unicorn's voice kind of explaining to you to go down the hallway and pull the red lever to open the chamber, and there's just two red levers in the wall.
Oh,
one of them is just our buddy, the mimic, hanging out.
Or look at it this way. I forget. Can horses see color? And so it just says.
I feel like unicorns have
a unicorn.
Oh yeah, probably all the sparkles
Rainbows.
and everything. Yeah, that's.
What if it just is blissfully unaware of how whimsical it is?
Would you kindly pull the lever? Would you kindly make your way to the ancillary lab with the chemicals? Would you kindly? Would you kindly? It's a very polite unicorn.
Very polite indeed.
I imagine also at least a little bit pathetic sounding, very sad.
Well, I imagine it sounds like weak, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this, and I think that what's great about this adventure, right, is like you can scale this into like a one shot where it's really straightforward. They start outside, they get the vision, they go into the dungeon, they run into like a trap. Maybe it is the animated roots of the tree, like you mentioned earlier, Matty. They continue going. They see the fire beetles. They get their first kind of warning. They go a little further. They have to fight the fire beetles because the wolf knocks them out free or whatnot. And then they get to the wolf and the mimic, and then they get to the unicorn. And it's just a really simple, straightforward one shot. They're just going through the dungeon. They get to the end. They free the unicorn like dummies, and they get wrecked. Or this could be a huge like adventure where they're just going throughout the entire like a huge like labyrinthine layer,
interacting with these strange kind of creatures and learning the personality of these mimics.
I almost like the idea of there being like different tribes of mimics would be neat. I've very rarely seen mimics taken on that kind of perspective. Usually
Yeah,
it's like doppelgangers, but I almost like the idea that there are certain mimics that are like with the unicorn and certain ones that aren't, maybe. I don't know. I just think that
factions.
could be neat
Mimic factions.
if you wanted to like flush this out into a bigger deal.
We table mimics are superior to the treasure chests.
Oh,
I see. We have a monk in our party. He's Google Fu. Thank you, Daily. Horses are not colorblind. They have two-color or dichromatic vision. In other words, horses naturally see blue and green colors of the spectrum, and the color variations based upon them, but cannot distinguish reds. Wow, that's very interesting.
Thank you.
Huh.
And using real life facts like that, if the unicorn had standard horse vision, the researchers probably would have a lot of stuff in the dungeon painted red, so that the unicorn couldn't read or distinguish one thing or another if it did escape because it couldn't see red or set it apart. And so that's a good environmental clue or a cultural clue as to what's going on.
Those are awesome details. That's a thing that like almost probably no player's gonna like make that connection. And then I feel like a year later when they're talking about this adventure and it comes up, they're like, the DM can then just be like, yeah, I mean, everything was red. Why do you think they made it red? It's because horses can't see that.
If only the player took knowledge nature, another underused and underappreciated skill.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Matty, right? Like, they've gotten through the dungeon, they fought all the stuff, they're in the last room to free the unicorn, they see it, the barbarian's like, I'm going to go free the unicorn, walks right up, and the druid's like, can I roll a nature check to see what I know about unicorns? Sure you can. You roll, they get like a 15, it's like, yeah, weird, everything here is painted in red. And unicorns actually are like horses, have dichromatic vision, and they're just like, wait, this was like an actual. You had something prepared for this, Dungeon Master. You had a thing like prepared for me to ask this question. This has meaning. Why does this have meaning? Hold up! Don't free that unicorn yet.
Yeah,
there's something deeper going on here. Wait a minute. And that's just like, I like that. I think that's really interesting.
And I think along the same kind of vibe with this being flexible in terms of like how long it could run. I also like the flexibility of you can put this anywhere. You're walking through the woods, all of a sudden unicorn talks in your brain. It is extremely modular.
Well, and it's great because the enemies too, like Mimic, CR2, that's really not that bad. Even level 1 characters can fight a Mimic, no problem. They don't have to fight the unicorn. Wolf is a CR1 quarter. Anyone can fight that. Fire beetles are a CR0. Like, you can put these enemies against like little, normal players, or you can make this as difficult as you want by putting like much more intense traps or other aberrant kind of creatures that are just kind of higher level versions of these things. So I think this is a really awesome adventure. Is like any difficulty, any place. Maybe you're in a swamp and you find a cave. Maybe you're in a forest and the unicorn calls to you.
A swamp and a cave? Like if you're looking for missing kids and you find a swamp in the cave?
Wow, weird. Oh my god.
What?
Exactly.
Deep underwater in a glass dome lab in the ocean.
Oh my god. That'd be so
That feels actually weirdly right for this. Like,
it kind of does in like a really bizarre way.
I mean, just the under ocean containment facility. It's classic. But I think we're
bizarre.
at I think we've kind of come to a good point on this adventure.
Yeah, you two are absolute madmen. I love you guys. You're creative, and you know what? I think you did a good job of showing off what can happen just by. I mean, through the minis. But if you're just willing to stop for a little bit of time, 20, 25 minutes or so, half hour, and you just think about what's the world around you, what path did we go down, and also what did we learn along the way? This was a ton of fun, and I look forward to seeing you guys either run it, flesh it out more, make it into some other kind of content to run as an experiment and see what the adventurers do in either of these cases.
Absolutely. We might have to get a neutral test party that we know hasn't been here or is aware of this particular adventure.
I can think of 2 people.
I can also think of the same 2 people.
Yeah, the same 2, the other 2 Delph players. Oh shit! Wait, no, I've got some folks. We could do this at some point. That'd be too. I think this would be radical.
That would be a lot of fun.
As always, Matty, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It is always an absolute treat to have you come and hang out with us.
And along the same vein, Matty, you call us madmen, but some of those ideas, such as the Mimicorn, there was some awesome stuff, Matty. It was an absolute blast making these with you.
And of course, thank you for the delightful minis.
You're very welcome, guys.
Yes, thank you.
You do a good job. I love your community. I love presentations. And I thought that this was an excellent way for us to come together and not have an awkward Thanksgiving dinner.
Now, Matty, for those people who are in our stream right now who are thinking, man, the DnDTime show's over. I want more Dungeons and Dragons content. Where can they find you? And are you going to be on later tonight, even? Perhaps?
Yes. So when I finish here with you, I need to go run a quick errand. I will probably have twitch.tv/MattyMorgs up and going around 11:30. And actually, I'll be talking. Yeah, Eastern time. I'm in Ohio. I'll be talking with Derek about something or another. So Derek has volunteered to step up and be a guest, a guest sort of DM or GM or perhaps even storyteller. Ooh, what does that imply? As we're going to talk about this, that, and perhaps even the other.
Almost like the narrator from the Twilight Zone, kind of narrator.
Yeah, as this Twilight Zone puts you into some kind of world, a world of dimness.
Oh man,
sort of a
exciting. Well,
I could come up with a subtle pun without saying the name, but that's pretty good, Betty.
Yeah, that is awesome. Oh, my cat is kicking around everything. Yeah, thank you everyone for hanging out. Thank you, Matty, for stopping by. Again, you can catch Matty at twitch.tv/MattyMorgs. I've just thrown his link down in the channel. Thank you all for hanging out, and we hope to see you on our next show. When is our next show?
Our next show is going to be Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's right, I'm talking about Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time, where we run 3 separate one-shot adventures with members of our viewer base. So come in and hang out with us on Friday at 9. Should be a lot of fun. And also come and hang out with us on MattyMorgs stream in a little while, because I at least will be hanging around in chat.
I will be chilling out as well, but I will be a little distracted. I'm going to be honest. I've gotten so sucked into The Witcher 3 as of late. I just started it like Thursday and I'm almost done. That's so exciting. But yeah, indeed. Thank you all for hanging out. We love you guys.
See y'all in a half hour, 45 minutes then, if you're going to come over to MattyMorgs.
I suppose that's it. Matty, we have a tradition here of doing a bad job doing our outro, but let me just explain it to you a little bit. And that outro is, we each say our names, and then we say, and this is DnDTime Talks.
Can we sync 3 people?
So can we sync 3 people when we couldn't sync 2 successfully ever? We'll find out in just a moment. So, without further ado, I'm Pete.
This is you, Matty.
Oh, we're going to, okay. I'm Matt.
And I'm Jeremy.
And this is
DnDTime Talks.
Thanks, everyone. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.